Good evening, November Foxtrot.
Evening.
Welcome to episode 201. How are we doing, Andy?
I'm fine. How is one, Mike?
One is good. How's two?
2 is fine. 3's not here, though.
3's not here. No, unfortunately, 3's got parental duties.
Yeah, daughter's future.
Yeah. So, hi, Blackbeard.
Apparently, is more important than us, which I think it is.
Yeah, well, I mean, he has 2 sets of children. There's his actual children, and then us. So.
Yeah. Dad, come back.
Yeah, we miss you. Which is scary, really, that we see him as a father figure. We're joined by a virtual audience this evening of Kenny Rebel, Roscoe's 117, Blackbeard, Pegasus. There are more in there, but not everyone's talking yet. So, no. Hello.
Mike, just quickly.
Yes.
What first popcorn yellow striped smile?
Right. So it turns out you can put emojis on YouTube. So I posted on the YouTube app first, and then a picture of some popcorn with the emoji, and it failed to do that. So it turns out that if people post the YouTube emojis on there, we get them as popcorn yellow striped smile, which is a very avid description of it. So yeah, please feel free to play around with that. We'll probably ignore it after a certain time frame.
Yeah, I mean, for starters, that is all we're going to be showing. Okay.
Pegasus actually works, so maybe it's just my EUD.
Maybe it's Who knows? You. I mean, it's nothing. I swear to God, right? If you find out Mike is driving and you have his mobile number, right, and it comes up in conversation that he's driving, just send him emojis. Because it's the most hilarious thing in the world. Because it
honestly
reads out to him.
It's very frustrating when I'm driving along. And to clarify, this is through the hands-free, so this is not me driving and texting or anything like that before anyone starts having a go at me because that. But it's literally the Android Auto app basically reads text messages and things and WhatsApps for you, but reads things like thumbs up, light skin tone emoji, yeah. which is fine until you let these 2 knobheads know, and then you end up with an entire message of emojis, which it's then just going like American flag emoji, American flag emoji, American flag emoji, smiling emoji, thumbs up, light skin tone emoji.
Yeah,
it's like, oh, for goodness sake!
What does it do when you do the poo one? Because I send that one a lot. Does it actually say poo
emoji? Yeah, yeah.
Brilliant.
I think the other thing that I find slightly amusing is that it sometimes decides to censor words and sometimes not. So sometimes it will swear, and other times it goes, halfway through the conversation, how are you doing today? Something like that. So there you go, Pegasus, popcorn yellow striped smile. Thanks, mate.
I feel like that's going to be a common thing. Maybe that should be a new...
That's the next op name. Popcorn yellow striped smile.
Yeah.
On tonight's show, we're going to be talking about pushing MilSim to the limit and kind of discussing as to how much more sim can MilSim get. Yeah. So for those that don't know, obviously MilSim stands for military simulation, and the idea is that we're going to be discussing how we can potentially, as a collective, a community, improve MilSim, or in the future, how more sim could things get. So following on, I mean, Defiant Events very kindly entered the chat. Hello, Defiant Events.
Yes.
We've talked before about their limited ammo gas blowback only events as being, potentially the future of MilSim, in so much that
we still need to pull our fingers out of our fat arseholes and go.
I've gone to one. I've gone to one.
I pulled a finger out of my fat arsehole then. But also as well, obviously last week we did say that we would have Hades Airsoft on. Unfortunately, he's had some bad news, some family related issues, so he won't be on tonight, but we're sending him our love as well. Hopefully once things get sorted, we'll have him back on because it's been a while. So yeah, that would be why there is a little change to the non-program episodes.
Oh, it was programmed. So we were going to be having Hades on tonight. Unfortunately, we're not.
Yeah,
so
programmed because we haven't written.
Yeah, we'll postpone that. So we brought this episode forward a little bit. This might actually be a two-parter. It's likely that the topic of conversation here is going to extend on probably longer than that we actually have time for in one episode. So we'll see how we go, and we'll get on with that. But we are going to be having the WAGs episode next week. So the only thing that we need confirmed is Andy's.
On that, I'll tell you. She's not. Oh, this was not a Valentine's Day present, I'll tell you that.
Anna is surprisingly well up for coming on the show. She's very keen to find out about Airsoft and MilSim and share her experiences and stories and discuss why we do it.
Yeah, Charlotte's very much like, generally don't care, and it's quite nice to have you out the house for a little while. I was like, oh, is that it? And she was like, yeah, that's pretty much all I'm going to say. I was like, okay, love you too.
Yeah. It'll be good. It'll be a good episode. So that'll be on next week. And then, we'll bear in mind for the week after that, because it might be we return to this, might be not. So Defiant says, we think that more sim and 556 would probably ruin repeat business. It's a fair shout. Let's try to avoid the implication of obviously shooting all the players at an event.
Well, isn't that the point?
I mean, it is more
shooting them with real.
Grant you that is more sim. I feel that's less sim and more realistic at that point. But I
mean, I if there was only a way that when you get hit, there was a realistic blood splatter.
Yes. Just someone comes around with a baseball bat and just beats the crap out of you after you've been hit by a BB.
I personally think all waterboarding should be at events.
Yeah. Okay. Kenny says more Harry Badgers. And then Pegasus says, Defiant, has LMG been worked out yet for real cap days? I'm assuming that this is the follow-up, that there's no perfect solution, but we found a happy medium. I believe that's the answer to that, Pegasus. So, squib vests. Yeah, you can have squib vests. That would probably get very messy after the first time you get shot, and you'd be like, oh, my stuff's covered in fake blood.
To be honest, like, if someone was wearing one of those and I shot them and they laid down, I'd be like, ah!
Just everyone's issued with a mandatory bottle of ketchup, and you just have to. Well, funnily enough, on that note, so let's dive into the list. So we've come up with 20 between us.
News?
Yes, there was some news. Oh, yes, there was some news. No, let me find that. This is poor planning. Proper badmin. No, there was some news. We had a list of events from OpTac.
Yes.
Let me just bring that up. So OpTac have issued a list of events for the year. So, out of fair play, we obviously went through Defiant's events the other day. I can't find it now.
It was on.
Excellent podcasting.
So while we think, shall I sing?
Yeah, you don't sing, but you just work something through, and I'll get it sorted out.
Yeah. So while Mike's faffing, just a little update on Blackstone CQB. We've been up there doing some work, getting it ready for the JBG event on the 22nd of February. Putting in some reinforced doors so we can do some, well, not reinforced doors, but reinforce door surrounds. So hopefully, fingers crossed, we'll be able to blow up some doors for that event. I'm hoping that they'll be getting some more events in there later on in the year if this one goes well. There is also another company called Swoop that do tactical training. They are going to be renting out the site every once. I think it's one Monday a month or 2 Mondays a month. So if you've got a Monday off work and you're free in the afternoon, there's also another training thing available there. I can see Mike's got the picture ready and he's looking at Uyghur, so that's my update.
No, that's cool. So OpTac events have shared this with us. So 29th of March, Op Homestead, which is a 12-hour MilSim. April, they have Op Scorched Earth, it's an 8-hour battle sim. The 2nd to the 4th of May, Rumble in the Jungle 2, which is an Ascension Research Kicking Mustang and OpTac joint event. June, Op Scorched Earth 2, another 8-hour battle sim. 4th to 6th of July, Op Kingdom Clash, Nemesis tactical event. Sorry.
You're right.
Just apparently got very emotional about August. Operation Irene, it's a Black Hawk Down 10-hour film sim. September, Op Scorched Earth 3 is another 8-hour battle sim. October, they're doing Op Citadel, 13 hours in Benghazi as a 13-hour film sim. And November, Op Homestead 2, another 10-hour MilSim. So if you are interested in any of those events, head on over to op-tac.co.uk. That's op-tac.co.uk. There you go.
There we go.
That sounded almost vaguely professional.
Yeah, it did for the first few minutes.
Obviously, as well as Defiant are in the chat, Defiant have a lot of events on. I'm not going to read out their list again, but if you'd like to go and check out Defiant events, defiantevents.co.uk. That's the end of the news, basically.
That's the news.
So between us, we came up with a list of sort of 20 things that we think can kind of be potentials for making a sim more sim. The idea being obviously to improve immersion, improve the realism, but with obviously still within the realms of it being an airsoft event. So the first one we're going to talk about is realistic ammo management and limited resupplies. So this harks on very nicely from the comment about Defiance. So and I apologise, it's not strictly GBBR, it's a real cap event. So the idea being is that you are limited to realistic magazine capacity. So for example, not running around with a Glock 19 with some ridiculous drum mag that holds 4,000 rounds, as set up basically as a DMR sniper. And
a DMR with like 1,000 round magazine capacity. And
yeah. And I mean, ultimately, LMGs, for example, are obviously limiting, real LMGs aren't running around with 2,500 rounds on them because they weigh an absolute ton. They are hard to carry around. I think there's watched an interesting video at lunch actually today where they, I think US military doctrine is sort of 50 to 100 rounds as a standard operating procedure. But, appreciate the fact that you blap through that pretty quickly in real world. So, people running around with an M249 with 2,500 rounds, 5,000 round box mag, it's not realistic. So that's a way of improving the sim aspect to limit your ammunition.
Yeah, definitely.
So,
and the changeover, I think, as well. Obviously, unfortunately, like with my M249, I can't change the mag, but I can quite easily count a 200 rounds into a quick speed, like a speed bottle loader. So once I get to the end, it automatically cuts out. So then I have to top it back up, which obviously takes a few seconds without trying to spill any. I think having an LMG capped at a realistic sort of level is always good. And also as well, I would suggest, obviously I haven't been to one event yet, but I would probably think that it's going to make the gunner a little bit more conservative on their shooting, because literally, I know for a fact if I've got 2,000 rounds in that and someone says hold that line, I'm going to hold that line. I'm just going to start cutting down trees in front of me. I don't care because I know that I've got 2,000 rounds. But if I've only got 200, 400 rounds on me, I am going to rein it right back.
I mean, this is the thing. Ultimately, if you want to go and do a speedball event, you go to a speedball event. Airsoft skirmishes are practically, full auto. I mean, whether it's a semi-auto or not, ultimately you've got very high rates of fire and things. Yeah. So the only real way to kind of limit people down is to reduce the ammo capacity. And yes, okay, it's open for cheating because people can, you're not generally checked if you go out to some of these events for exactly how many BBs that you got in your event. But if you're going to cheat on that, don't go to that event because there's no point. That's the whole premise if you're going to a real cap style of event. Oh, there we go. to find our LMG reel cap is 600 rounds now, which is approximately the limit of a belt, a section with carry. So yeah, that's fair. That makes sense. It does open up the whole premise for LMGs, because I know that there was previous conversations, again, going back to the kind of the 50 to 100 rounds. It's very challenging in airsoft to have that. Just from the practicality of a box mag. Box mags with only 100 rounds, and if they're designed to hold 5,000, you lose probably half of that almost in the feeding mechanisms and the like. You don't get that kind of pressure behind it. So
yeah, so I took mine apart.
The maracas, the tactical maracas, as you're running around.
I literally, I did a little test on mine. So I literally fed through. I put in 100 rounds into my box mag, fed them through, and then when it ran out, I took it all apart and counted how many rounds that are basically from the motor at the bottom of the box mag up to the hop unit, and mine holds 55 rounds in that line. So if you've got 100 rounds, you've got 55 already in the. So I worked out that if I needed to do 100 rounds, I'd need 155 rounds in that first load, or each time, so I know that I'd actually shoot 100 rounds.
Maybe this is something that airsoft manufacturers could look into, creating more, I want to say, real cap box mags for LMGs, but an equivalent of like a mid cap or something like that might be an interesting way. Or maybe some sort of, I don't know, adaptable device that you can effectively turn up or down, because you could. The problem with an LMG is that ultimately it is a box mag. It is a high capacity magazine. So loose BBs in there are going to rattle, and the whole rattle issue is one of the more annoying things, especially if you're going to be running around, because it's great being all stealthy, and then you've got running along behind you or with you or whoever. But perhaps maybe you could create some sort of I don't know, a box mag with a Star Wars wall, like the trash compactor, which you could like maybe have on springs or something, so it closes in to kind of keep things tight and compact. I don't know. It's an interesting concept.
Yeah. And so in mine, I got sticks like shit. Took it apart, put a layer of sticks like shit around the inside, and let it dry and then like trimmed it off. So basically, both sides of my box mag have got like a sort of silicon outer, so the BBs.
What you're going to say? BBs, they're now lined with BBs.
Yeah, I stuck them in and then just filled them up. But yeah,
doesn't rattle anymore.
it still rattles, but it's not hitting the plastic, so it's less loud. Yeah, that was good fun. That was an interesting experience.
I see no reason why as a practicality, you couldn't create a 600 round mid cap equivalent. But I mean, realistic ammo events are quite easy to adhere to. So as long as you've got a mid cap or lower, you can run in a mid cap. You just count out 30 BBs. It's achievable. So you don't have to go out and buy a whole load of 30 round magazines. If you we're talking here from a player cost perspective, it's going to be a pain to go out if you've already got a kit set up to go out and do that. But as long as you're not being an absolute knobhead and trying to cheat, just put the rounds in and count them in.
Yeah, it's not hard to do. There's a few mid-cap manufacturers now that give you the option of basically.
It's got like an adapter, doesn't it? Yeah.
So it's like got a little slide, so you can either go, oh yeah, I've got 250 rounds in this, or you put the little slide across, and that it only lets you load 46 or 50 or whatever it is. So at least that way what you've got. The one thing that I quite like is Defiant Event saying 2,000 rounds for a vehicle mounted MG. Now, if I put my PKM on, say, for example, a quad, that is now technically it's a technically MG vehicle mounted weapon.
Yes, but it's not realistic, is it? That's the thing.
I mean, have you seen pictures from Syria? They'll stick PKMs on anything.
I'm not disagreeing there'd be a PKM on it, but you're not going to have 2,000 rounds. Yeah, you're not going to have 2,000 rounds slung off the side of it, are you? Easily.
I mean, I could do.
So the other aspect with resupplies as well. So obviously we've talked about limited mag capacity in terms of what on your person, but I think one of the challenges with, again, an airsoft event is that, you know, once you hit out, you are effectively respawning. Now, are you respawning, going back to your respawn and going, right, cool, completely bomb up and then bring out another, say you're limited to, I don't know, 200 rounds on you for sake of argument, in terms of a number of configurable 30 round mags. Are you going to go out, re-bomb completely, then come back in completely fresh? Are you going to... Exactly. Now, should you? Here's my next point. Because the concept being that what if you are trying to replicate the idea that you are in a limited ammunition scenario? So, for example, again, use Longmoor as an example. So for those who don't know, Longmoor has effectively two operating bases. You've got the forward operating kind of harbour area, which is the big concrete kind of base for all intents and purposes. And then, and I don't know if it is still this, but it used to be like the HESCO barriers. It changes every time I go. So I can't remember if it's changed recently, but you have kind of the forward OP almost, which is kind of like a HESCO setup around a small kind of barn building. Say that you've got a team in that forward OP. Are you going to go re-bomb and then come straight back in from there?
Yes. Because, and this is my logic behind it, if you've respawned, you've died, which basically means that you are no longer that character that you were playing. So you respawning is basically player 2 is now entering the game, and you are reinforcement for that front. They're not going to send a reinforcement up to an FOB half magged up.
No, so the way I look at it, but what I'm suggesting is you are taking information with you as you leave. Yeah. So say you've been hit out, you're effectively returning. You're able to grab whatever you want. You could grab bags for your mates. Say you've got like a stack bag at your rear base. You know, you've got mags for days for the rest of the team there. You're allowed to resupply in field as long as you resupply from a location, like a bag or something. You bring an extra bag out. Is that then realistic in terms of that scenario? Because you're going back going, oh, right, okay, you know, the team hasn't been able to coordinate with QRF or anything like that. There's no immediate resupply. So what I'm going to do is just grab this bag because I know they're out of ammo and take that back with me.
I mean, then you're going down
this is the whole immersion thing. This is what I mean with the role play and the scenario.
I mean, if you've got comms with 0, then I would say go back, rebomb, take what you need up, because you are a new character in the game and you've been sent up and they've sent you with equipment. If you haven't, then maybe it's down to you as a player to kind of go, how immersive do I want it to be? Do I want them to, like, do I want to run out of ammo and then like send back?
No, but this is the whole point. This is the whole point of this episode, is that we're trying to see
that's what I mean.
How sim can you make a sim? That's the point I'm trying to make.
I mean, if you had it as down to the rules, it'd be policing it would be hard, but if you had it as down, part of the rules is if you go back and you don't have comms with 0, you don't get to rebomb.
Yeah.
But if you do have comms with 0, then you can by all means.
But then it's easier to not allow people to bring grab bags back, for example, and they've got to be, I don't know, brought by, you know, we mentioned the quad. Maybe there is a designated quad with a QRF that they are the ammo resupply. So, because again, that gives the enemy, and this is kind of crossing over into another point, but this kind of gives the enemy a dynamic objective. and that they know that, you know, there's a team holding that building that's going to be running out of supplies. They're on limited ammo.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're able to cut off that supply line, that's going to give them the ability to cut off, you know, the attackers or defenders' opportunities to fight back, and therefore, you know, dwindle that force as would a real scenario. You know, it's effectively a siege type state. So if you've dwindled all their ammunition and everything like that, which is what you would want to do, you can then take the building with less risk to your attacking forces.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that I'll be well behind. I think having a structured supply line would be good fun. I think having a structured supply line would give the opposite team a secondary objective as well. Like, instead of you going right, well, we know that they're held up in building 1, for example, but they have a supply line that's leading down the main high street. Do we want to just we can't win a war of attrition with them because we know that they're going to keep getting supplied, so let's cut them off and then basically starve them out. I think that would be quite fun, especially as a defender, where you starting like you've only got limited mid caps, for example, so you've literally only got 46 rounds and you've only got 6 mags on you. You go, that's not a lot of rounds to hit people with.
Yeah, but then you make every shot count. That's the idea. Pegasus has jumped in. That information in terms of when you are hit out, for example, is potentially useless if you get hit out and the bleed out is X amount of time. So that's a point. You know, say that you're at an event that's got like a 30-minute bleed out time or an hour bleed out time. We've had at some events, you know, if you're out of the game for an hour, airsoft games are so blimmin' dynamic. Like, if I wouldn't really want to be at an event that you go out for an hour, you come back and you're in exactly the same scenario that you're in. Nothing happens because, you know, don't get me wrong, I appreciate it happens sometimes, but if nothing has happened at all and, you know, your team has remained in exactly the same static spot, that might be a slightly boring event.
Well, unless that's your objective. Like
I would have expected something to happen roughly within that time frame, though. Like, to just have an hour with completely nothing going on at all.
Yeah. What have you done? Made some coffees.
Just slept.
Yeah, you got shot and then it all went quiet for an hour.
I mean, don't get me wrong. Perhaps you're at an OP or something like that and these things happen. But again, I think if you're doing Overwatch or something like that, you're not just going to be walking back into the base going, yeah, I'm respawned now, I'm back in, it's all fine. So you'd have to obviously reinsert appropriately. So Sterling apparently had an interesting way to resupply. All the team's ammo is stored at, let's call it, a stash house. If the enemy team took control of that house, it stopped the ability to resupply.
No, I like that.
Yeah. I mean, it works both ways, because ultimately, if you've got supply lines for both, I don't know, say you've got like a NATO force versus a rebel force, then, you know, the rebels are going to be wanting to resupply. NATO is going to be wanting to resupply. How that's done might be more covert with the rebel side of things, with like moving boxes and things through, I don't know, tunnels or covertly under big. I've seen one person use a pram once, but like, for example, the bins, Andy, that we used at Sheffield,
Pegasus, yeah.
So there's obviously ways of having those supply lines, and you can make them. It makes it more immersive and more interesting.
Yeah, that was fun, actually.
I know you liked being a bin man.
I really love being a bin man. Well, no, we weren't. We were at an asbestos removal team.
You were, yeah. M. Quimby says, could you implement a total team ammo limit just to make dying with ammo important? Maybe that would end in people not being able to play at all, though. So, yes and no. I mean, I think the ability to not be able to play, when we're talking about MilSim, ultimately the whole point is LARPing. And it was one of the things that surprised me when we had our chat with Lone Tree MilSim. Jake. I'm terrible with names. But he obviously observed that there was a lot less LARP that goes on, which is obviously your role play side of things at events in the States. And it surprised me, because to me, MilSim is probably about 50% role play for all intents and purposes, if not more. So I think
because we had a little chat afterwards, didn't we? And he said there's no sort of, like, everything's just rules. There's no sort of like role playing. There's no sort of like you capture an enemy, you try and get information out of them. If you take an objective, that's it. You take an objective, you hold it for the X amount of time, and then you fall back to your position. There's no toing and throwing. There's no. He said it's very linear. He said US MilSims were, so there was no real.
And that could just be his interpretation, because I know when we spoke to Randy, they obviously had there was the prison riot, wasn't there, at one of the events that he did. So I know that was seemingly quite role play heavy, but I don't know. Maybe that's just Jake's experiences, but to me, the role play aspect. So if you're running out of ammo, that's where that command structure comes in. You need to get resupplied. You need to be making links with comms to zero. If you can't get comms to zero, you might have to send a runner. That runner's obviously got to take the risk of getting out of whatever scenario you're in to get back to base, to then obviously get the information over. And that's where things like your QRF comes in and becomes more interesting. And, there's other dynamics there. I mean, potentially you've got role play with civilian leaders or something like that. Maybe you could blag your way out. Maybe you could offer something else. I don't know. There's obviously different ways of playing it. So, but yeah, I don't know. Defiant says, we have a limit on mags you can carry, which means even if you have fired the ammo and the mags are empty, technically you can't resupply as you are already carrying your full mag limit, albeit empty.
Okay. Yeah. That sort of makes sense. So would you allow like sort of a, I don't know, basically a bag of BBs to be dropped off, say in like an ammo crate? So if someone literally got a 5.56 ammo crate, filled it full of BBs, like of certain weights, would you allow that to be brought to, say, let's just use a FOB for example purposes? Would you allow them to basically roll up with, say, like speed loaders and stuff in this ammo box for that section to reload what they needed? No,
they don't allow loose ammo to be carried.
No, so I mean, so basically you've got a QRF.
Yeah, I think the concept is that it's not resupply in the field. But I mean that's if you run out of ammo in those sorts of capacities, you become combat ineffective and then have to effectively leave the game anyway. So
you'd have to swap out,
because this is the other thing with any event. With any event, you need the space for a logistics chain to start with, because there's no point having Blackstone, for example. Say you've got 2 lines of battle going on at Blackstone as a CQB site. There is no point trying to have a resupply line there because it's all of about 20 meters behind you. Do you know what I mean? And it's not a criticism of Blackstone at all. It's just
it's the size.
You need that distance, because the whole point in a resupply line is, firstly, you are putting people in a remote location. They are going to be running out of supplies. It's that survivor type scenario. But it needs to be of a reasonable distance that you can't see the fob, because if the fob can protect the resupply line, firstly, I don't think you're far enough away to really render resupply, because you might as well just run back and get some more ammo if you need to. But it also means the enemy, it's a target for the enemy to locate and deal with and effectively scupper that team's approach. So, hi Landnav, welcome. This is fine. We can and will relocate spawns, which means ammo can be brought forward for resupplying day sacks.
Ah, right. Okay, yeah. That's sort of what I meant.
Yeah. No, it's just an interesting concept. I think the premise of having limited ammo capacity and having to maintain and deal with supply lines is an extra challenge, and it's ultimately something logistics, for any military is important. You look at World War II with the advance through the D-Day landings. D-Day happened, and we won't get into the whole premise of D-Day, but D-Day happened. The advancing forces moved forward, and then you had almost a similar size army of people behind, just fucking trying to keep the ammo and the medical supplies and the food and everything like that coming to the front. anyone that's watched A Bridge Too Far is a prime example of that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you look at just the convoy of trucks that were just absolutely just stuck waiting just to get supplies in and in and in. So, yeah. Right. So next one.
What you're saying is I need to buy a combat resupply truck.
Yes.
Yes.
But
right, that's it.
I think so. Again, I mean, this kind of comes back to vehicles, and it might be that we skip around on my list a little bit, but the logistics with vehicles. So let's bring that in. So we'll talk about vehicles now for a second, but vehicles are great, and vehicle logistics with the whole resupply is really handy, but you need, again, size and space to do that.
Yeah.
Longmoor, for example, does have a road running through it, but effectively is through the town.
Yes.
Yeah. So whilst you've obviously got the capability of driving a vehicle backwards and forwards, there's kind of specific routes that a vehicle would need to go, because they, for starters, they don't want you driving all over the frigging place. You know, there's nice bushes that they're putting up and various barriers and things like that. So obviously that's a struggle. Certain events, for example, you look at MilSim West games, you look at the events which are on much larger playing fields.
Mm-hmm.
You know, some of the events that you see in Western US are just vast areas of ground. So the terrain covering makes more sense. Border War, you know, the amount of vehicles that they've got at Border War, and yet you see videos from Border War where there aren't any vehicles in sight because people are, you know, they're not on the beaten tracks and things. But I can see, Ground Zero, the prime example. That is a massive site. You're probably looking at 150 acres ish, I think, maybe more. But that's a location where a vehicle transport from one side or the other makes perfect sense.
Yeah, definitely.
You've got multiple routes. You know, even a quad bike with a trailer. You know, you've got the capability that you can actually run proper resupplies. Whereas a vehicle, again, Blackstone, no point in having a vehicle at Blackstone. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. But yeah, it's a bit like Comsite 3. A few players haven't been there. That's got basically a little ring road that goes around it. So having a vehicle there, you'd only really need one to basically overpower. Whereas if you went to Redcon 2, where you've got the runway, you've got all those routes going up around the back and things like that, that you could get away with 2 or 3 vehicles running. And sometimes it is handy being able to just call in a proper QRF. Right? If you've got 2 vehicles, they don't have to be out on the land all the time, but you could have a section with them and act as a proper QRF. So, say, for example, your objective is to capture a HVT. You get that. You're not going to start trudging him all the way back across land, are you? You're going to get to a point and have a QRF literally ready and waiting to go to collect you and the HVT. So I think if vehicles are done properly and works, instead of just randomly roaming around doing what they want, I think can work really well. Obviously, Op4 is a little bit different because they would just randomly, but even then, Op4 they would put a vehicle in a secure location because your vehicle's your
Sorry,
vehicle.
Andy, are you getting quieter? Just to check.
I don't know.
I don't know. Can someone in the chat let me know? Because for me, you're definitely getting quieter, and I don't know if I've done something wrong or if something's happened.
I don't know if I'm leaning on my volume button or not.
You sound like you're getting further away as you talk.
I can bring my mic closer if that helps.
Yeah. I don't know. Sorry, carry on. I didn't mean to interrupt. It's just...
That's all right. But yeah, I think if it's done properly, vehicles can be really quite handy and a good. Because also as well, you could quite easily have it. Whereas if your vehicle gets knocked out, that's it. It's knocked out. Your vehicle doesn't respawn. So, say for example, you put a pyro in front of it, and that classes it being destroyed. That's it. It's destroyed. Job done. Your vehicle doesn't respawn for the rest of the game or the rest of the weekend. Like I've done a couple of events where they've done that. And it's literally like oh crap, we've literally just lost one of our QRF vehicles. So now we need to be really careful of how we deploy them. There was one game where we played.
You just suddenly got loud again.
Oh, yeah, we had one game where Op4 had 3 technicals and Blue4 had only 2, and one was a tracked vehicle, and literally the tracked vehicle got taken out in the first like 10 minutes, and that was it. It just sat there in the middle of the field for the rest of the weekend, like the rest of the weekend. It was a 48-hour event. But it was really good because Op4 basically claimed it as like one of their 4 FOBs. So they put all their flags up and they started dancing on it and things like that. And then it was like the organizers had it. So our mission was to go and destroy it so it can't be used. Like proper, like, so we literally went up there, put a load of charges around it, blew it up, and the owner locked all the doors and everything, and that was it. Job done. You can't use it as an FOB. It's just a random bit of scrap metal sitting in the middle of the field, and that worked really well because it gave Blue4 a secondary objective. So I think vehicles can be used if used correctly.
Yeah. I mean, ultimately, vehicles are lovely. Everyone loves having a vehicle, really, because it's an extra thing to a game that's not. You go to most skirmish days, they don't have vehicles. I appreciate there are some, like Invicta, for example. Not Invicta. Who has the vehicles? Who has the tanks? Is that Invicta?
Oh, yeah. That's the one that Silly Gilly. It's the one that Silly Gilly plays a lot.
Yeah.
Invictus? Somewhere.
But, yeah, I mean, in short, vehicles are great, but you need to have the capability to use them properly. One aspect that was suggested with you got vehicles is things like fuel resources, for example. So, you obviously can't just be running around the vehicle the whole event. It might be that you Imperium. Thanks, Les.
Yeah.
So with an event, for example, where we're talking about limited supplies and the like, potentially having jerry cans that you have to transport to a location that the vehicle might run out of fuel. So you can't just, rock around the site constantly the whole event without contemplating the resource requirement for that vehicle. You've obviously got ammunition requirements depending if you've got limited, vehicle mounted weaponry. But things like breakdowns, you could simulate a breakdown on a vehicle.
Yeah.
I've talked about before, like the idea of having like a dynamic plate target, which obviously if you were to shoot or impact with like a laser or something like that, I don't know, but where that would effectively send a signal to the driver who knows that right when you have to stop the vehicle, that's it, it's incapacitated. That gives another element to a game. So I think vehicles can be quite dynamic and helpful, but you do need to have the space to operate them. There is no space or point. If you on the Rift site with the airport, I can't remember the name of it, Code Red, Redcon. You are very quiet for me, and I can't turn you up any louder. By the way,
maybe it's me just sitting back and trying to be relaxed. It's all right. I'll be on attention more. I'll lean on my mic for you.
I can't hear you very well.
Is that better, Mike?
That's much better now.
Oh, Jesus.
But if you just had the runway, which is obviously just a straight stretch of ground, which you can see the vehicle at one end, you can see the vehicle at the other end, that would be a naff site to have a vehicle at. But where Redcon obviously has the tracks and things that you can kind of go around and you can have vehicles in play in various locations, that adds a scenario. Defiant says, I think a wagon is a huge cost and logistical pain in the arse to knock out for good. Vehicles can be too overpowered, but it is possible to balance. And it depends, again, on how you're using them. So if they don't have weapons attached to them, so you are just using it as like a logistics vehicle, say you've got a checkpoint set up and part of the duty of the occupying force or rebels, whatever like that, is to man a checkpoint where you've actually got things happening.
Yeah.
There's the number of checkpoints that, you kind of see at events which are a static location with very little happening. But if you've got a civilian population, which again we'll come on into in a minute, but a civilian population where you have to, effectively check a card like you would do for, this is going to start sounding like the Nazis, where you've got to check their papers and stuff like that. I'm trying to move away from that. But my point being is that, say Red Dawn. Mm-hmm. Red Dawn's an excellent point. Whichever version you want, we'll talk about the newer one, but North Korea forces invade and they set up checkpoints, and then the rebel forces are attacking those checkpoints.
Yeah.
You've got civilian in the area, you've got, and that's another opportunity where an occupying force or JTF or NATO or Russians or whoever's kind of the army can to run those checks for resupply lines.
Yeah.
If the civilian forces are trying to move weapons and ammunition and like through those checkpoints, it gives you an opportunity that you can cause distractions, and it's more of that immersion and role play.
I mean, every combat zone is going to have have checkpoints, and there'll be security checks. Like you can guarantee that there's checkpoints and stuff in Ukraine at the moment. There's checkpoints in Syria. There's checkpoints in Israel and Gaza. It's just something that goes hand in hand with a military operation, because the last thing you want is every Tom, Dick and Harry walking into somewhere where you're just going to start bombing the crap out of, or there's going to be like some sort of operation going on in that area. So I do think checkpoints need to be. It's one thing that I quite enjoy as well. I quite enjoy manning a checkpoint, because although you're standing around basically not doing a lot, you're actually doing a hell of a lot. You're like, Christ, we could be attacked at any moment. Someone could just turn up.
You are constantly on edge.
Yeah.
And whilst the premise of suicide bombers is not something that I necessarily believe needs to be translated into airsoft, but so and by that I mean in terms of the people that literally rock up, they've got some sort of device mounted to them, and then they start screaming racial obscenities because everyone seemingly always goes to the same stereotype whenever they're role playing as a suicide bomber. But even just someone rocking up with a Mark V, I mean, I've done it before. Mark V sort of tucked behind my head. I was pretending to have been taken hostage for an event. I think it was an Octo event. And we managed to be taken right into the heart of the operation. And then myself and James basically just deployed our Mark V. So we literally struck it from behind our heads and lobbed it, and then pulled out a pistol and a knife and started trying to just stab and stuff like that. But that makes a checkpoint more interesting.
Yeah. I think checkpoints are a good because also as well it could be the fact that the organisers could have a checkpoint that is being manned throughout the 48 hours, but then at some point the checkpoint gets like they do it so they put a 4-man team on the checkpoint, and then OPFOR or whoever's the opposition of the checkpoint forces send a large force, and that 4-man team's going to get overrun. Like you're putting a whole different story and a whole different twist on one area.
You do need a perimeter though with a checkpoint, because if you've got a massive site with like a single road running through the middle and you position a checkpoint there, the enemy aren't going to go anywhere near that checkpoint. They are just going to run around the outside of it because they can. So good checkpoint locations.
But then you need to be on your toes. Like that checkpoint unit, that checkpoint force need to know what they're doing really. If they haven't set up a perimeter, and that there's the organisers send us say a force of 15 against a force of
oh no
5.
Sorry, I don't mean a perimeter on the checkpoint. I mean in terms of if you've got a massive site, say you've got like 400 meters to your left and 400 meters to your right of dense woodland, having a checkpoint on a road, fine, you're going to be able to deal with people coming up and down that road. But if you're trying to smuggle stuff past the checkpoint, it's going to get boring for the people at the checkpoint, because you can just literally crouch through the bush 400 meters away and you'll never get spotted. So you need to have that engagement with that checkpoint as well.
Yeah.
So I mean, for example, say you've got a secured compound. Again, going back to Longmoor as an example, the Hesco fort. That's a good location for a checkpoint on the gate. So maybe you've got some voting going on. You know, you've got all the civilians lining up to come through the checkpoint to vote to then leave again. That's a good location because you can't get in it any other way. That's what I mean.
No, yeah.
It would be a real challenge if you're guarding something for 2 hours and nothing happens. That's why you need to have something on a checkpoint where it is a pinch point, basically. But
Hesco fences. Build a wall. Yeah. Everyone seems to be doing that at the moment.
Les says Mike fucked it up because it 10 minutes to go off. It was very funny, but it didn't go off, so we fed him lots of sweets. Oh, yes, the grenade. Yeah, so I was snuck into a fob and lobbed the grenade down. That was a different event, Les. That was a different Octo event, but I was taken prisoner at a different... I get taken prisoner at a lot of events. I don't know why this is a common theme. But I snuck in and then managed to grab a Mark V there and let that off, threw it down, and I was like, ah! And then it didn't go off for a good 30 seconds. And the person I was trying to blow up, who was Mike, Captain Splatfuck, he just walked away from me because he's like, well, I'm not standing near that thing. And I'm just like, oh, no. So
here, have a Haribo, Mike. Oh, okay.
Right, so we've obviously talked about realistic weapon mechanics in terms of ammunition, but what about the idea of breakdowns of weapon and gear? So we're not just talking about I've lost it on my list. So basically your weapon malfunctions. Do you think that having malfunction cards or something like that could be appropriate, or do we think that maybe because it's airsoft, enough malfunctions already happen?
Yeah, I think I wouldn't want to.
Probably already quite immersive on that front.
I mean, I wouldn't. If someone said, "Oh, you've got to take a card," and basically, during your next firefight, you have to do what
field strip it.
Yeah, I'd be like, "You're just jinxing it at this point. Like, it's barely working as it is anyway. Why are you now telling me that it's got to malfunction?" Because also as well, I understand the thought process behind it, but if you've been given a card for your weapon to malfunction, for example, but your mate's weapon actually malfunctions, and you get in a firefight, you kind of go,
"Yeah, I've got to stop shooting now."
Yeah, we've lost 2 rifles instead of the supposed one. I mean, it could be done. It could be done, but you'd have to kind of, as a player, you'd kind of have to take the bit of a lead on it. So, say for example, I'm going to use Defiant because they're in the chat. If Defiant gave your squad, say squad of 5, you pick up 5 cards, 4 are green and 1's red, and that means, right, okay, well, I've got a malfunction. If your mate's weapon malfunctions, you can't actually proper real malfunction. You have to kind of go, okay, well, we're only there was only meant to be 1 rifle down, so I won't have my weapon malfunction because we've already got one. But then then the other, you could turn around and say, well, is that cheating? Because you should have 2 weapons down. I feel like it's opening a can of worms.
Yeah, I think we could basically summarize that one as a poor idea, because I think ultimately airsoft weapons, I've been in so many firefights where someone goes, "Oh fuck, my gun's falling apart," and actually you look around and they're just holding like a pile of springs and bits of AK or whatever, and you're like, "Oh no." and then you have to stop the firefight anyway because you're looking for all the little bits on the ground to try and help your mate out. So I feel that it's a pointless idea really on that front, but it was just a novel concept that you could employ, because weapon jams and weapon clearing and stuff like that is a real still issue. I mean, I'm going to bring this specific event up, but we went to an event where an LMG just started going off on its own in the fob. We're all running around like mad, like trying to find out where we're being shot from, because we got rounds coming in, and it turned out to basically just be that it was an LMG that got wet.
Yeah.
So
Chris's, I'm going to name them. I nearly lost my fingers fixing that bloody issue.
Defiant says airsofters themselves barely function. Why simulate more problems when they already have going on?
Yeah, true. I can account for that one. I barely know what day it is on events.
I mean, you look at kit going wrong. You've got people with sleeping bags that get wet, tents fail, stuff like that. People are already having a miserable time on some front. We don't need to simulate that. I don't think. I feel that's probably a little too far.
Yeah. Could you imagine though if that was you? Like you're like, okay, yeah, I'm gonna like try and push through it. My tent's failed. My sleeping bag's wet. All my food.
Oh, by the way, you can't use your gun for the next firefight
and then
it's broken.
Yeah, I'd be like, are you having a laugh? I can't even go to bed to sulk.
Right, the next one is a two-parter, really. So this kind of rolls in with medical aspects as a whole. So most MilSim events that Andy and I have been to employ a kind of a bandage style structure. We've obviously got a variety of bandages that you could have out. A lot of people you see have kind of strips of white bedding that they've nicked from their mums or whatever like that, and just cut up into rags,
or
up to
bits of fabric that you've got someone else's mum to make.
Yeah. So we've obviously got the
NoFo
bandages, which
you can also buy. Just saying,
you can buy. We do have some.
I've blooded mine up now. It looks proper good.
So they're based on like an Israeli style bandage, which is obviously a big wad pad that you obviously use compression on the wound, and then it's got a strip, and you run that round and tie that in a suitable knot. Whereas the problem with those is that they are an absolute pain to reuse constantly again and again, and they're quite expensive to replace. Whereas the one that we're talking about is a NoFo invention of a reusable Israeli bandage style-esque pad that's quite simple to reuse. But that's kind of a common way of doing it. But we were kind of exploring the idea of having injury cards. So again, it's not just a case of if you take a hit that you've got, you just put your hand up and go hit. It could be that you're trying to replicate like a more severe wound over a less severe wound. For example, a headshot might be a complete immediate kill. OXO events previously have run with a location-based injury aspect. So, for example, if you get shot in the arm, you can continue because you still have another arm. And I think I can't remember exactly how many hits you could take. I think it was slightly down to.
It was a maximum of 3, I think they said. On the last one I played, it was 3. So if you basically lost both your arms and a leg, at that point you're dead. Like you're not doing particularly well.
Just dragging yourself with one arm because that's all that's left. But I mean, location dependence. Obviously, your torso or your head has a different effect on your ability to continue playing. But you could have an injury-based card system where obviously once you hit, you can pull out a card or something like that, and it's a case of right, I've got these things, and then when a medic comes over, so again we're kind of talking about having a dedicated medic role within this. The medic has to follow a procedure that's based on your injury. So, for example, I don't know, you could pull out a card and it just says splinter, and the medic's like slaps you one in the face and goes, "Don't be such an idiot." It could be, as Defiant said, just tis a flesh wound.
Yeah.
There's another aspect to that. It could be that you have to have a full medical procedure. And I know that there are some events that do employ these, either as a simulation type style event for training paramedics and the like. You can get quite complicated systems which employ a kind of a feedback system around the body, which, ultimately it's got, I think you almost have like different sensors around the body and they flash. So the medic doesn't just have to approach you and then go, right, I'm going to medic you. It's a case of they are looking for the wound. It might be that you have. Go on.
The one that I've seen is where the medic has 2 bags basically, and they have one bag that is full of like loads of little notes, and the other bag is like full of their medical supplies. And basically they run up to you, and the first thing they do is they pull out the card and they rip it, and then they hand it to you and you read it and they act it out like there and then. And then it's up to the medic to work out what's wrong with you. So that the medic is the one that's carrying around like this bundle of notes basically.
You've got syphilis.
Yeah. I have diagnosed you with herpes. That worked really well. And you were crying out for a medic anyway. But then, like, sometimes, like, you come up and they'd open it and you go, and it literally just said on it, "You're dead," and you just kind of go, and then and at that point the medic kind of goes, "Oh well, I'm too late." But because of that, you had no bleed out. Like, your bleed out was that you basically waiting for a medic. Which sometimes you could be sat there for like 15, 20 minutes.
I mean, maybe there is scope for a small device which, you know, players effectively have on them. I mean, you know, we've obviously got a lot of gear for the most part kind of on your body. Maybe there's a scope in the market for a device which you basically, you know, when you hit, you push a button on it. Firstly, that starts your bleed out timer, because I know a number of people that seem to have a very different interpretation as to what a 5 to 10 minute bleed out time is. It could be a way of, you know, a medic coming over, and I don't know. I'm literally pulling things out my arse at the moment, but like an RFID type approach where, you know, you scan it, and the device then tells you what the problem is, or something like that, or a little readout. I don't know. I'm just you know, spitballing ideas effectively, but
I mean, the only thing of that is if
ways and dynamic ways that you could play that medic aspect.
Yeah. I mean, if you had a QR badge and you basically came up and waved your phone over the QR code, and then loaded it up, to me, I'd probably start laughing, because I'd feel like I was just in Star Trek at that point.
Yeah, I mean, okay.
It's probably a good way. It is probably a good way of doing it. Everyone gets issued with a little QR patch that takes you to a randomizer app or something. So the medic comes over, scans the QR code, and then it says, "Right, this person has got this injury. You need to deal with it." So then one minute you could have like the first time you get hit, you've got a gut injury and you need to be like proper QRF'd. Or you've got like you've stubbed your toe, or you've got coffee in your eye or something. Do you know what I mean? It could be.
So here's a simpler way of approaching it, because obviously we're talking about, you know, applying loads of technological marvels to this at this point, your phone, etc. It could even be as simple as a 3 bandage system, right? So you've got a red bandage, which is your first medic. That can be applied by a single medic. A yellow bandage is 2 medics. You need to have 2 medics with you during the process of putting that second bandage on. So now it's a case of like, right, we've got to deal with the logistics of having potentially a medical team roaming around providing support as part of that QRF, or as part of a secondary role of 2 teams working together or something like that. And then, I don't know, your third hit then requires a casevac, which kind of brings on to the next point with the medical protection aspect of an event. But it might be that you have something along the lines of realistic respawn. So you can't just walk out of the game. You have to be casevac'd or medevac'd out. You know, you are literally stuck there until QRF comes and gets you. Now, that could be quite boring again, because, again, the number of games that I've played where, you know, your entire squad gets wiped and then Command goes, well, they're all dead now.
Yeah.
No point sending the QRF to them.
Yeah, but then at that point, like, if they're all dead, or dead, we should say, your zeros, that should be your priority, because now you're down an entire squad. Like, fair enough, if it keeps happening to the same squad, then yeah, you might get a little bit bored.
Stop dying.
Yeah, you might get like, you are really bad. You're just going to stay round here now. Like, you need to hold Daddy's hand.
Like, I've spent so many resources on trying to keep your team alive.
Yeah, I even sent you with another section, and they survived. How did you lot die? I feel like that would be us. You know,
it adds another aspect of immersion, and how that would be played out needs to be very detailed, because you could end up with an absolute clusterfuck of you've got this really elaborate storyline all planned. You know, you've got, and now you've got half of your team are dead, waiting for the other half to come and get them, whereas the enemy team are all there. So now you've just got half a team trying to fight the full enemy team to revive and drag, you know, Dave's fat bum from over there into the back of a landy to then take him out of the game, and then he can come back in with his 600 rounds.
Yeah.
So I'm not suggesting that there's a simple answer. Hello, Lance. He's finished parenting. You're more than welcome to join, Lance, if you want to.
You can come and join us.
You might as well join back on if you've got time. Yeah. So there's obviously opportunities there that the whole medical aspect, I think, could be improved. I feel that, you know, yes, you can go as complicated with it as you want, but ultimately, what are we going to have medical players in an airsoft game actually doing? Because they're not going to be applying, you know, full triage and everything like that to players. They're going to be sitting there effectively going, right, I've got, you know, you 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You're back in.
Yeah. I mean, I'd be a little bit pissed off if I was sitting there and I was role playing and someone came over with a set of medical scissors and like
snipped off all your clothes.
Pop my plate carrier, snip down the scissors, put a pair of revive pads on me. I'll be like, what the fuck is happening right now?
Why am I naked all of a sudden? I don't understand.
What happened? What? I'm only here for a bit of fun.
I mean, it does obviously, you know, the medical aspect I think is important. I do think that Medivac and CASVAC missions are underrated and underutilized potentially, but that maybe again requires vehicles to enable that. That needs a fairly effective QRF, because I mean, if you think about Kajaki, is it Kajaki the film where they go into the valley? I might be mispronouncing that. It's the film based on the real story where they go into the valley and then one of them treads on a landmine, which is sort of washed into the river.
Yeah, I haven't seen. I haven't seen that film. But
okay, I haven't ruined it for you. That's effectively the storyline of the film. But then they're basically dealing with the mission is now pretty much scrubbed, and now they're having to deal with the fact that it's become a medevac mission. And I do think there's an aspect of that could be employed. But they're relying on a helicopter team with a team of medics to come in and get you out, which obviously we don't have helicopters in Airsoft. That would be a bit OP.
Here anyway.
So how you kind of relate that, because again, you know, maybe it's a case of a stretcher or something and taken them to a certain location and then they just effectively, you know, die and then come back out the game and respawn. So, yeah. Right, lads, wrap this up now. I've got to watch Kajaki. It's a good film. It's a really good film. I don't know if that's the name of it. I'm pretty certain it is. Yes, James C., the ones with the paras in Afghan, a very sad situation. It is a horrible story, because I'm pretty certain it's based on a completely true story. Well worth a watch. But just as an example with Airsoft, I think that there's medical stuff that could be employed a bit more. But with the bandages, so with the different coloured bandages, this kind of leads into the resupply aspect again. So, for example, what about the idea of trying to actually implement triage decisions? So you've got 3 players down. One of them's your LMG gunner, one of them's your team leader, and one of them's another medic, right? Your medic is limited. They've only got 1 bandage left. They're having to make the decisions to who to medic, which adds another aspect to the game. No, but my point is that it adds another aspect to the game.
I thought that was a genuine question. I was like,
no, sorry.
Who would I do it? Yeah.
It depends on your scenario, doesn't it? I mean, maybe it's your RO. Maybe it's a toss-up between your RO and your team leader. Who you're going to medic back in. From a gameplay perspective, probably your RO, because that's going to make the most sense. So you've got comms. But from a practical command perspective, maybe the team leader would be the better opportunity, because they then coordinate the team to then get them out there. I don't know.
Yeah.
But with having finite supplies for bandages and the like, so it's not just a case of every player's got 2 bandages on them. The medic can only medic 20 times. that's going to have to then require a resupply, which is another aspect to this supply lines thing that we were talking about.
I can't remember who ran it, but basically they issued you red lolly sticks. So they had like 5 or 6 lolly sticks, and they were morphine injections. And basically, you ran up and you snapped the stick, and you gave it to the player. And then when the medic was out of the lollipop sticks, he couldn't medic anyone else.
Yeah, because I mean that replicates the whole morphine aspect, doesn't it? And maybe that's the thing. Maybe with the medical cards, it's a case of right. It's not just a case of like you've got syphilis, you're going to be dead in 5 minutes type thing. Maybe it's a case of right. This player requires 2 morphine and 3 bandages, and then the medic's having to go right. I've got to snap 2 of those and deploy 3 bandages, and then they're running out of supplies. But I don't know. I think the card aspect's quite tricky because it requires players to carry a card around on them. And again, Airsoft players are like herding cats. You give them something, guarantee you within 5 minutes, 2 people have lost them.
I mean, I probably would have left it back at camp. I would have picked it up and gone, exactly. Oh, yeah, brilliant.
Oh, yeah. I was meant to bring that with me, wasn't I?
But then at that point, you say, okay, well, you're dead. You've lost your cards. Like, you literally, like, say, for example, like, you can have, say, like, 2 or 3 medic rules. So, like, you can only be medic, say, twice. But if they forgot their card, you just turn around to them and say, well, that's your stupid fault. You're dead.
Yeah.
No, and then that would make players go, oh, actually, if I don't bring this card with me, as soon as I'm hit, I'm out of the game.
Do you know what would work well? A scratch card. You have a scratch card with like 4 or 5 rows on it, and then literally, as the person like, right, here's my scratch card, and the medic has to scratch it off, and then that tells them, and they could be randomised. So it might be like not just like the first one's 1 bandage, the second time's 2, etc. But it might be, oh shit, yeah, you need everything.
Yeah,
straight away.
Oh my God. You need IVs and
yeah. Defiance says, I'm really confused by the concept of a grenade coming into a room with you. You then pull out a card and it says you've got syphilis.
Have you not heard of syphilis grenades?
The syphilis grenades.
Yeah.
Phil says he's laughing out loud at the concept of 4 guys running together, all yelling, waka, 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 we're a helicopter.
Yeah. Have you not played this game before? I feel like you're missing out, Phil.
Yeah. But I mean, ultimately, the idea of having extractions and vehicle CASFACs and stuff like that. And I just think that there is a whole facet to MilSim which is underutilized with the concept of medical stuff. We go to extreme lengths to try and role play other aspects. We're always trying to like make the weapons as close to being realistic as possible. We all want to kind of emulate various uniforms and loadouts. We've got people dressing up as, enemy combatants. We've got people dressing up as NPCs and stuff like that. Whereas potentially the medical aspect of a MilSim could be quite a simple thing to make a little bit more complicated. It does require people knowing what to do, and it is obviously a challenge trying to get anybody to do anything different. But to me, that's
change.
Yeah. But I mean, you get little specialist teams. I mean, there was a player in the US called MilSim Medic who purely just went to events to medic people. And maybe there's a team out there that might want to, and I'm again pulling this out my arse, but maybe they want to become like known as like a medic team. We all kind of shelve ourselves into, I'm a sniper, I'm a rifleman, I'm an LMG gunner. I've got a vehicle with a LMG attached to it. I'll be the driver of that then. Whereas there are a lot of other things out there. There's IED roles that you could play. Oh, not IEDs. You're not going to stand there going, I'm a bomb.
I'm a bomb.
EOD.
I'm the syphilis bomb.
EOD and ATO, stuff like that. You could be the logistics team. You could be QRF. You could be medics. There's an awful lot of stuff that kind of you could pull out to kind of build immersion. Not saying you should, but just saying that you could.
I want to be Team IED now.
Team IED.
Yeah. What are you?
What's Andy doing over there? Why is he just sitting on the side of the road?
Yeah.
I'm a bomb. I'm a bomb. I'm a bomb.
Yeah. Someone has to come over and defuse me. Oh no!
You're just sitting in the meeting room in the corner going tick, 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 tick. James sees the boring but essential bit. Exactly that. You know, it's we all play airsoft with the concept of we want to go and have a little bit of a blap, and it's fun hunting and being hunted by humans. I would probably summarize airsoft, but I think MilSim is that whole point of it's taking it to that next step, and it's not just I want to have a command structure. You know, I want to have a mission, because the missions are all the same. Let's be fair. Skirmish missions and MilSim missions are, for all intents and purposes, the same, albeit done in slightly different ways. So, you know, immerse yourself. If you're going to bleed out on the battlefield, if you get hit, don't just go, I'm hit, and just sit in the corner with your hand up going, yeah, I'm dead. I'm dead. I'm dead. Scream!
Yeah, scream. Crawl. Try and crawl away.
Scream that you've got syphilis.
Yeah.
Defiant says, Paul's card, you're sleep deprived and dehydrated. Yeah, go for it. I mean, that could be something. You could have someone just pass out from that, technically.
Yeah, I mean, a hit, like you could have it. So instead, like a hit is basically a medical situation. Like you could really go for it and give the civilian population medical cards as well. So if they're accidentally hit during a firefight that breaks out, you could literally be like, you'd have to obviously make this one-sided, but you could literally have due to the loud noises, you are now giving birth. like, do you know what I mean? You could proper go out there. Like, it doesn't always like surprise, you are pregnant. But you know what I mean? Like, you can give them to civilians as well. Like, it doesn't have to be for the people that are actively being in the firefights. If you had a civilian population, you could quite easily give them medical cards as well, because it's all about hearts and minds as well, isn't it? So a
bit like the scene from Children of Men.
Yeah,
there's battle going on, and then you just got someone carrying a baby out of the firefight.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, like, you could go to those sort of extremes, and really like throw your medical team under the bus, like. But then, yeah, I mean, if you want to have
people like, I think if you're going to go to a good MilSim, people like that role play aspect, and you see that from battle sims, you see it from MilSims, and you see it from, you know, whether it's a small event or a big event. People like doing that, and people will put the time into that. And I think, you know, you need to have an element of reliance on it that people are going to play it properly, because again, while we joke about, you know, a doctor going, oh, you've got a cold or something like that, you know, you're fine. You need to have that concept of, if you're trying to go for immersion, you need to have that concept of a medical team coming in who are actually there to try and save your life. Because ultimately, the whole kind of concept of a MilSim is that you are trying to replicate the real world a little bit. And there's an awful lot of stuff that happens in the real world, which is sad, and it is upsetting, and it is, you know, it is not a nice thing to have to do. But we are playing a game where you are shooting someone. So that's not nice either, really, is it? Like, but should we talk about civilians? I feel like we're borrowing.
You've gone down a hole now.
Yeah. Civilian role players, and
love them.
Impactful interactions. So, you know, we've all been to events which have, well, you know, most of us have been to an event which has an element of civilian players. Now, whether those civilians are DS team, which are obviously operating on behalf of whatever company is organising that event, it might be that you've got a full array of people that have rocked up just to be civilians for that weekend. And I think genuinely a MilSim is best when you have civilians in game. And I don't mean in terms of as for target practice or anything like that, but I just think that it adds a whole extra dynamic, because if you've got a force-on-force event, that is basically a skirmish. You know, you are running around, go, right, that player over there, I know that they're the enemy because they're in green and I'm wearing tan. Fine. You know, I'm wearing MTP, they're wearing DPM, they're rebels, I'm going to shoot them. Now you're thrown into a mix that you're trying to clear a building where you've got, somebody dressed as an old granny, for example, and it might be that they're pretending to be an old granny in terms of the realm of like they're trying to smuggle stuff out, or it's a rebel player that's in disguise or something like that. But it just adds that extra dynamic. You can't just run into a building and grenade every room, killing everyone in sight, because it's boring. And you can, but there are certain things called war crimes, which I know it's not a real war, but it's airsoft war crimes.
Yeah, I mean it's only a war crime the first time, so.
But, I think the role play, though, I'm just going to move on from that. The role play, we have both role played, haven't we? I mean, you think I'm going to use Driffield as the example at Defiance event, which was we were the cartel, and it's fun role playing, and the two of us were acting out I was acting out in prison and you were trying to get some sleep.
I was genuinely trying to get some. I was so tired. I was like, brilliant. I get pulled out the game for a couple of hours. I can get some sleep.
But I'd like to think that by providing that interaction to the players who were the police in that scenario, it made their role more interesting. Because if we literally just sat there bored or asleep, then they'd have been not bored per se, because they might have had other things to do. I don't know. I didn't give them a chance to have other things to do. But if you've got people to talk to, you've got people to interrogate, you've got people to go and find information from, you've got village elders to go and meet so that you can work together and try and create like peaceful interactions. I was dressed like Honey G.
Honey G.
I should not wear a baseball cap and glasses. Sunglasses. But I think having civilians in game just makes life so much more interesting. If you're a drug cartel, selling drugs to civilian population was great. The only thing was there wasn't enough of them, and I do think there should be more civilians in games. And I don't know how that plays out. Whether that's a case of you have to get paid actors in and which obviously pushed the cost of tickets up, perhaps. Maybe just put a shout out.
Personally, I'd be happy if someone turned around and said, your ticket price has gone up by like up to like 120 quid, like for a weekend, because we're going to get some paid actors in, and they're going to role play certain things for you. I'll be like, yeah, all right.
I think you'd have to get a lot of them in though, because otherwise, if they, I'm not being funny. Whilst it'd be great, but I don't want to rock up to an event and there's just Mr. Bean because they spent all the money on one paid actor.
Yeah, well, or Sean Connery, or
I'm at a MilSim.
Or Keanu Reeves, if we can ever get in contact with him.
But I do think
a lot of I reckon you could probably get, if you went to like a improv, like a couple of local improv groups and said, look, we'll bung you a couple of quid. There is a small chance that you might get hit with a BB, but you get to act out these set of roles. I bet most of them would be like, well, yeah, it's a couple of quid in my back pocket and I get to have a laugh and do what I enjoy.
But I think some people, I think airsofters, skirmishers could do it. If you want to go to an event on a MilSim and you want to have a good crack and you want to get into MilSim, I highly recommend going as a Op4 role. Now, it does depend on the style of event. So if it's a flipped event, i.e. the Op4 are kind of the main faction, that might be a bit of a challenge. But if you've got the capability where you can kind of have a little bit more loosey-goosey, you've got time to go and do it, having a massive civilian force makes things so much more interesting. And you can change the dynamics of the event. So you could have a rebel team and your military forces, and then have it so that say the civilian forces could be swayed throughout the event. Mr. Blobby and Mr. Tumbler.
I mean, yeah, Mr. Blobby would generally.
I'm not being funny. If I burst into a room and Mr. Blobby's in there, he's getting slotted regardless. I find Mr. Blobby terrifying.
Do you?
Yeah, for our US audience, genuinely, if you Google Mr. Blobby, it is some weird popular culture thing that we have in the UK that is a person dressed as a big pink blob, basically.
Or any of our listeners from any other country.
Yeah.
We've got to give some shout out. We'll give some shout outs at the end. I can't remember who.
New Zealand. Yeah, we've got a lot of New Zealand listeners.
Yeah. Where was the other one? Taiwan,
Russia at the moment.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's just civilians. I think civilians make an event.
Yeah, just Google Mr. Blobby.
They can either be NPCs, but they need. I'm going to caveat this slightly. Don't just put 20 people in an area and just go, right, go on, just have a go. Because they need to have the capability to be a little bit creative. Like, I've been to events where people have taken it on themselves to bring an entire fruit market. Like, literally, they rocked up to this event with just pallets of fruit. You know, there was the guy that brought the mobility scooter. He was just an old man driving around a mobility scooter. You know, you need the kind of immersion of costumes and role play and just something else to do that's not just, I'm going to guard here. I'm going to wait for the enemy to rock up. Right, the enemy are out here. They're looking for their lost dog. Yeah, okay. Right, well, I've spotted you, so I'll see you later when you've got your gun out and you're shooting me, and I'll shoot back at you. It's, you know what I mean? Like, events where civilians are just basically rebels that haven't become rebels yet is I don't know. I find that a bit dull, personally. I think it's more interesting
it's like,
when you're actually trying to work out, I saw you earlier. I think you might be a hostile. I don't know. Because then you get the whole intel gathering thing, and you go, right, yeah, we caught this person. They were taking pictures of us. We're pretty certain that they're hostile. They're military-age males and things, and you have to report that information back. Seesaw at Hooters.
Yeah. But I genuinely, and I think I can speak for Ash as well on this one, or Pegasus, I had more fun on the Saturday at Red Tide 2 when we were the asbestos removal, literally walking around all day, just walking around with a wheelie bin, didn't even pick up a weapon. Like, we were dropping off drugs, we were dropping off weapons into little stash houses, like moving money around, and genuinely some people literally came up to us and were like, you do know there's an airsoft game going on? And we're like, yeah, we're part of it, but we're right.
We're just busy.
We're asbestos, we're asbestos removal. And they were like, oh, okay. Like genuinely, like the fear of when James rocked up in his vehicle, pulled up next to us, and like they were like, we need to look inside, and we're like, no, you can't, there's asbestos, because he had like 4 guns, shitloads of drugs and shitloads of money in there, and we were like, and this is the time we get stopped. And they were like, oh, is there asbestos in there? I was like, yeah. And they were like, okay. And drove off. I was like, I don't know how we got away with that.
I mean,
but, like,
Octo,
we had more fun doing that.
Yeah, Octo. You know, I mean, playing from the other side. So as a player, you know, I've been to an Octo event where Padraig's squad are there. They're undercover CIA, so they're basically players, effectively.
Yeah,
but we don't know they're players, if that makes sense. So it wasn't clear in the offset of that event that they were going to be potentially hostiles throughout the event. Whereas when you rock up and there's literally one side versus one side, but half of the Op4 team aren't Op4 until later on in the event, because you know that that's going to happen. Pegasus says no one wanted to look in the bin.
No, literally. Yeah. As soon as we started saying asbestos, everyone just kind of left us alone. I think and the trouble is, like, we just threw on just some high vis, just some normal high vis.
Yeah. Which at a MilSim makes sense, because you're not dressed as a marshal in that event, because there are no marshals. You know, you don't have high vis. There is if something goes wrong, but for the most part, you know, we had police there as well, but they weren't obviously real police. So
yeah. But I mean, just walking around in your high vis orange, just plodding around. It was like, it genuinely, it was really good fun. And like, obviously we were getting a bit bored at the beginning. So that was me and Ash. We literally just said, right, we'll just do this for a bit, get guns and stuff out to where we need them. And we ended up being utilized so much. Like every section, we're like, oh, can you run this over to our spotter over at this point? And we're like, yeah, sure, not a problem. Throw it in the bin. Just wandered off with this bin. Off we go.
Fine says we originally let role players to come for free, but there wasn't that much take up, and some that did took things to a less realistic level. Our new role play control uses red, amber, and green cards.
Huh.
I mean, this is the thing. There is an aspect of role play that we need to be careful of, and I think it will probably be the last one that we bring out tonight. So let's talk about kind of,
I mean,
enemy prisoners and interrogation.
Should we do that as? This is definitely going to be a two-parter. Yeah,
it's definitely going to be a two-parter.
I know Lance.
Trust me, I've got a whole lot more of these that we can talk about.
I know Lance wants to talk about that. He likes a bit of interrogation. And
no, that's fine.
We've already been on for a half an hour, and people are probably bored as hell listening to us.
Well, let us know if there's anything that we've missed so far. Let us know if there's things that you've been at an event and gone, you know what, to make this more interesting, this idea, because it'd be great to hear. And I do think it's something that, you know, in a society where there's lots of things going on. I mean, you know, Defiant at the start of the show said, if it helps, we're probably fucking off our Irene this year as somebody decided to steal our event name and run it in a prison. We might do it next year. So I'm not going to go into that. But the point... because I don't want to make it too negative, but the point I'm trying to make is that in a society where there's an awful lot of competition going on, you know, Airsoft and MilSim is quite a niche market as it stands. Mm-hmm. You need something that makes you stand out. You know, we all have very fond memories for those that went to Legion events in the UK of their events, because, you know, Mike was really good at bringing that immersion into it. And their whole ethos was to try and make the events as immersive as possible. And I'm not saying Defiant don't do it. I'm not saying Octo don't do it. And all the other companies that run MilSims, you all kind of do it in your own special way. And I'm not saying one way is better than the other. But the point being is that people clearly like that immersive nature. And if there's ways, and simple ways, Legion, for example, ran a riot where they issued all the rioters foam bricks, right? No one knew this was coming. So all of a sudden, if you know, you're at a MilSim where this hasn't been, and I don't think it had been done before this, I'd certainly not seen it. You're at a MilSim where you're standing there facing a whole load of angry rioters and someone lobs a brick at you, you're genuinely thinking that's a brick. You're not thinking, that's foam. You're thinking someone's taken the event too far and they're lobbing bricks at you. So there is a genuine element of fear. But that riot control aspect, that kind of, you know, search and rescue, or, you know, trying to cassevac players out, all these things just make an event more immersive. And we've all seen it. I know it happens. You'll be at an event and there'll be a team that prospectively, whether it's done rightly or wrongly, prospectively seems to have more of the Gucci missions. Mm-hmm. Do you know what I mean? Like they're the ones that, they come back. We just stormed this crack house under nods and thermal and did all of this, etc. And you'll be sitting there and you're like, well, yeah, I could have done that. That, you know, that would have been cool to do, but I've been on guard duty for the last 2 hours, and then I'm going to go and do a patrol, but there's no one over there because there's nothing happening, and then, you know, and
because you killed them all 10 minutes ago.
Yeah. So you need to have a lot going on. And I know that James from Defiant, have had various bouts about this before, in that, you know, it is hard. You can't have every topping on your pizza. But I do think that there is scope that if you enable players to have more opportunities for role play within the confines of the game, and you've got civilians in there and you've got kind of more things to do and more things going on, then to me, I don't know, Andy, if you disagree, but to me, that just means that you've got more opportunity for players to kind of build their own event a little bit more. Like if you give into that whole role play aspect, like we're here, we're going to be selling drugs, so let's actually try selling drugs. You know, not
real drugs, but
no.
See, so I understand that side of things, but also as well, I can also understand why a lot of organisers, and I know we've done it when we organised our event, and we've done it at the Rift events, and I know for a fact James does it at his events, and I'm sure Octo do it. Definitely Octo do it at his events. What is you need a bit of control to go, because otherwise it can descend into chaos like, very quickly. So you do need to kind of have a bit of a leash on the game itself. But I do think there is scope for players to get into the role playing side of it a little bit more, if that's what people want.
Well, it's realistically why I think that CivPop, Op4, Blue4, all these factions at an event still need some element of command and control. So I get that, obviously, you know, say you're a load of drug cartels and you're at an event, right? Drug cartels are actually very organized groups. You know, it's very hard to run any form of business without any control and organization, let alone multi-million pound or dollar drug operations. There needs to be some element of command and control there. And I think the only thing, you know, the CivPop do need are kind of clear guidelines. So if you're going to have people at an event in terms of a certain capacity, you know, they need to know what they're doing, what they can and can't do. And that can be challenging. I don't disagree, but I think ultimately, you know, the reason that people do MilSim is for the sim aspect of it. And MilSim, you know, we can cover Vietnam with it. We can cover proper battles from the past. We can cover future conflicts. We can cover fictional things. We can cover zombie invasions. You know, it doesn't really matter the storyline, everything like that, but you just need to have that immersion, basically.
Yes.
Well, we've waffled on for an hour and a half about how sim is MilSim. I do think this will be a two-parter, and we'll bring back the rest of the list when Lance is back in the chair. So, but next week we're going to be chatting with the wags. It's going to be, they're not even wags; they're just all wives. But we're going to be chatting with our wives.
Yeah,
they're going to be on the show. Hopefully for the full hour and a half. We'll wait and see.
I mean, that's pushing it. I'll tell you. I would probably limit mine to about half hour before she gets bored and wants. Unfortunately, you will have to have the dog with us as well, because
that's fine.
Weird anxiety. Families. Yeah, it'll be. He's got some weird anxiety issues at the moment, so he'll be sitting in between us. So that'll be good fun.
So if you are in any way interested to know or throw questions at our wives, I mean, one of the main things that I'm always asked is just how does she put up with me? You know, I literally put a tent up in my living room the other night, and she's still married to me. So I don't know how that works, but you can send your questions in for the show to our email at nofochat@hotmail.com. Our Instagram is @November_Foxtrot_NoFo, and the website is novemberfoxtrot.co.uk. You can also contact us on Facebook via our Facebook page, or via our own individual Instagrams, which are over here on my right. At 9volt Airsoft for Mike, or me even, at @_Quartermaster for Andy, and at the _punished_1_ for Lance.
Yes.
I always forget if that's enough underscores. I think it is.
And just quickly, obviously this year we're trying to build up our profile within the Airsoft community, and also try and get out there a little bit more. So if you have enjoyed the episode tonight, obviously if you've got friends or anything, if you've got friends, I mean, if you've got friends that you think that might be interested, like, obviously please share with us. Please hit the little thumbs up button. We're trying to break the algorithm this year, so we really are trying to push ourselves like out to the rest of the community. So if anyone can like help out with that, it's very, the algorithms on YouTube and Facebook and stuff are very reliant on shares and likes. So if you can just spare 30 seconds just to do that for us, it'd be really, really appreciated. And also as well, this year the NoFo team will be doing the Great Tommy Sleep Out. So please keep an eye out for that. We're going to be putting a link up to our GoFundMe, Just Giving page. In the next couple of days. So obviously any support for that will be greatly appreciated. The person who gets the most donations will have a forfeit. So if you have a forfeit idea for sleeping out,
hang on, when did we commit to this?
I'm adding this now. So if you've got if you've got a forfeit, drop it to us in an email or on our Instagrams or anything. And then whoever wins or gets the most money raised under their name, they will have to put out a random task that they have to do during the night.
I'm just going to shout out to anybody that might vaguely like me. If you do want to donate to him, because this was his idea, and I'm pretty certain Lance and I hadn't signed up to this. Lance might disagree, but
I said it on the chat.
I know that we are,
and obviously the more
read the chat, it's too much on there. I know that
the more money. The more money that we raise, the less gear that we'll be taking. So at the moment, we've obviously raised no money. So at the moment, we've got sleeping bag,
glamping at this stage.
Yeah, we're full glamping at this stage. But for every £100 that we raise, we're going to knock a bit of kit off. So hopefully by the end of it, it will just be, obviously we need to stay safe. So it will just be, if everything goes well and we raise over £1,000, which is our current limit, we'll literally just be sleeping in a bivvy bag and a sleeping bag. That'll be it. Each. Unless we get a mess. Oh, let's get a massive one.
Stop talking. Each.
That could be one of the tasks. Yeah, like literally. To the point.
Why do I get an absolute bollocking when we're doing the 24-hour show and I'm like, let's do an extra hour, and you're like,
because we were nearly dead at that point. We're not dead at this point.
Right. Join us in a few weeks where we'll be talking part 2 of Pushing Sim to the Limit. Join us next week for I'm going to call it the Wags episode just because it's got a nice ring to it. Wives episode. Ladies' night. We'll call it that.
Oh, yeah. I might. They should dress up in our airsoft gear.
I can ask. I can ask. Yeah. I mean, in the meantime, I'm gonna have closing words of the week this week. I'm gonna, MilSim is all about simulation. So push that immersion and get involved. If you go to an event and there's any form of LARP, just engage with it. Don't just close yourself off and go, well, no, this isn't for me. I'm not into that. Just have a go. Even if you're there as a NATO player, just try and emulate how someone in that situation would react to what's going on, because it will make your event more interesting.
Yes.
Kenny says wife's airsoft gear. I don't know if he means his wife or our wife's. Wives. I don't know. I know that mine. Be an interesting episode next week. It may only be a 20-minute show. We'll wait and see. Yeah. In the meantime,
well, I mean, we can kick them off and then carry on and be like, oh, glad that.
In the meantime, have a cracking week.
Yes, and enjoy your pew-pews if you're playing this weekend.
Yeah, and we will see you next week, 8 o'clock. Normal time. Stay NoFo.
Stay NoFo. Ciao,
all that lovely stuff.
All that. Miss you, Lance.
Bye, Lance.
Bye, Lance. Bye.